Hello, and welcome back to the BFA Baby podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Hartman, and welcome back to my bedroom corner. Today is an episode that kind of jumps off of last week's episode. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, we talked about the screenwriting concept of kill your darlings when you're in a creative process and how that has applied to both my writing and my choreography creation and creative processes. And since then, I had my first rehearsal for the newest piece that I'm setting, which we talked a whole bunch about in that episode. So since then, we've had the very first rehearsal, and I kind of wanted to reflect on the very first time I choreographed things, how I've been coming and going and everything, and yeah. So today's episode are some tips I have for what to expect when you are at the front of the room for the very first time. You know, if this is your first time setting a piece of original work, if this is, that's really what we're really aiming at. If this is your first time at the front of a room setting an original piece of work, here's what to expect. Here's what you should do. Here's some, what is this piece of hair? Here's some tips and tricks and what you should do. Just kind of from my choreographic experiences, ways to make the process easy, fun, a little less stressful, daunting, especially a little less daunting. But before, if you're watching on YouTube, fit check necklace that you can very prominently see is Brooklyn Charm. Literally love my Brooklyn Charm necklace. Love her. Anyways, so yeah, let's get started. Very lovingly gonna call this episode What to Expect When You're Expected to Set a New Piece of Work. What to expect when you're expected to set a new piece of work. Number one, be connected to the piece. It sounds so easy and so, no shit. But if you are not 100% fully connected to your piece, the people that you're setting it on, the dancers, the actors, whatever, they're going to be able to feel that, and they're not going to have that emotional pull to it either if the person teaching it to them doesn't have the emotional pull or the connection either. You know, so just getting a piece that you're really connected to, you really feel strongly about. Last week when we were talking about our darlings, I talked about having to kind of cut down pieces of the work that really, we're not serving the story, we're not serving practicality, and all those things. And it has left me with a piece that is very much what I want it to be, and I'm very connected to it in the story, and there's a personal tie. And obviously, you're not going to have a personal tie to everything you set. Maybe you're choreographing for, a kid's musical, it's not going to be, super emotionally challenging. But, in the vein that it is, and you get to set it, and it's an original work, you pick everything, pick something you're happy with. Don't ever create work that you think... Don't ever create work that is only made for other people. We talked about this last week. People that make art for other people should not be making art. You should be making art to fulfill yourself, your creative voice, your drive. You should be making art to tell a story, get something off your chest, everything. So just absolutely letting that go, telling a story, just appreciating your work, and your performers can feed that off. Feed that from you as you go into your work. It's really important to really love what you're doing, especially if it's a piece of original work that you're creating. If you love it, your cast will love it. Next is also kind of another no shit thing. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not. You may have a cast that looks really great on paper, and then you all get into the room and it's not working out the way it should, or the props that you were promised aren't there, or you're really you choreographed a dance for multiple people in your head, and now you're seeing it in real life with multiple people, and it's not working how you thought it would. This actually just happened in my rehearsal. There's a part where everyone is standing on the chairs, and in my brain I was like, oh yeah, everyone just stands on the chairs, but then I was like, wait, if someone is sitting in the center row of seats, they can't see the person that's on the chair towards the back of the table. They can see them if they're all sitting, but when they're all standing, there's no way. And, I just couldn't picture that in my brain till I saw it with real people in front of me. So then we learned, okay, we're going to stagger the chairs, we're going to like quarter out the table this way, whatever. So that's a very minute example, but it's not always going to be perfect, and it's not always going to work out the way in your brain it worked out. And that's just a really big part of that creative process, and kind of that big exhale, that big breath, being like, okay, it's difficult to make things the exact same as they are in the blueprint. Like, even like if you're building a skyscraper, you can account for everything, but it's not always going to be so super perfect. And being able to adjust and adapt to those, especially when seeing it on like real dancers in real life, being able to adjust and adapt is such a critical part of the choreography process. And if you just prepare yourself for it, if you just prepare yourself that like, okay, we have these ideas and it might look a little different once we get it on like real bodies. If you just prepare yourself for that, you'll be golden. You will be so golden. So yeah, so I just don't go into it expecting being like, we're gonna copy it from my brain and paste it onto the people, because it's not always gonna be that seamless. Next, we have set a schedule of goals for each rehearsal, but remain flexible. This is one of my favorite things to do, just so that like I know where I'm headed, and they're currently my dancers, actors, cast, whoever, know where we're headed, so I really, really, really early on, like once we get our rehearsal schedule like nailed down, I sit down and I look at the piece and I divvy up those rehearsals. So, first rehearsal goals were, meet the piece, discuss contracts, which we'll get into in a little bit. Meet the piece, discuss contracts, learn a little bit. Like, a little bit was very vague, and we actually learned more than I thought we would, which was nice. So I kind of have like a loose structure, and then depending on what we get done day one, we can kind of adjust the schedule going there. So then I like forward that schedule to my dancers, and then they kind of know what they're getting into. They kind of know if they're not going to be there, they know what they're missing. Just a rough outline. Obviously remain flexible. If you get less done one day or more done one day, the next rehearsals are going to shift, obviously, but just a loose schedule. Like somewhere in the middle of my process, it's like learn minutes 5 through 7 and clean minutes 1 through 3, or like clean transitions with props, or like there's literally a note on like one of the days that's like focus on magic trick today, because there's like if you listen to last week's episode, you can hear all about the magic trick, but there's literally like just notes, things that like by this date I'd like to sort of be in this realm of the creative process for the piece is really important. So I think that setting a schedule would keep you on track, it will keep your dancers on track. Setting a schedule, it's tedious work while you're doing it, but later in the process you're going to be so thankful that you did it, because then you have notes in your brain of like, oh yeah, we need to really focus on that, like really hone that in, this is really important. You can really go back and forth and like dial in on what you want for the piece. And then obviously you can add and take away as that changes throughout the process. Next up is communication is key. We use GroupMe, and I think it's just communication is so critical, because if not everyone, once again, like with the schedule, if not everyone is on the same page, people are going to get confused, and it's just going to be a lot more like admin work than like artistic work. And obviously, in the setting, so if you don't know, at Missouri State University, go Bears, our spring dance concert, you can adjudicate a student piece. So basically, students choreograph the pieces, they pick the music and everything, they pick their cast out of the people who audition for spring dance concert. They pick their cast, they set up their rehearsals, they're responsible for booking space, yada, 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 have their dances done on a certain date, in which the faculty will then pick which ones they want in the show. And so basically, you are kind of, that's what I'm doing a student work. When you're doing a student work, you do kind of have that double hat thing where you are doing admin stuff and you're also doing the creative stuff, You're making sure that all your spaces are booked and it's the right times and it's the right people, and you're making sure that, the schedules are right and your cast knows what's going on, but you're also creating the dance and you're shaping the dance and you're refining the dance on the bodies, and it's kind of a double hat situation. And I find that really great communication is the best way to like even out any of like the dissonance between those two roles. So we use GroupMe, and GroupMe is great because you can like messages, so like if you've seen this message. You can send documents through there, so you can send files, photos, videos, so I'll send them like rehearsal videos. You can do polls. The polls are really important because it's like, even if it's stuff that's like, are you going to be, because we have like a chunk of rehearsal that's over spring break, and it's like, are you going to be here for spring break? Do I need to cancel the space? Like, you can have polls, and like, GroupMe is just a very easy way of communication. That's how I've done it for all my pieces. That's how like both faculty and student pieces that I'm in communicate. And just having a really clear line of communication from day one. Like, my cast list was dropped, I had that GroupMe. It's named the title of the dance, it has a little picture that's like a central vibe of the dance. Everyone's in there, everyone's active and communicating, and that just makes the process like so much easier. And if they have questions, they have a direct line of contact to you. You have a direct line of contact to your dancers. And just, GroupMe's great, and the communication just really ensures that everyone knows what's going on with the piece at all times. And also, it really helps the dancers feel welcome in the space, which we're going to talk about kind of like welcoming in the space in a little bit. But it just really eases up that like sometimes tense and murky like dancer choreographer relationship that sometimes can be like, it just, having a really open flow of communication can really ease that, and then that can also help rehearsals go by smoother if the dancers feel safe and like they know what's going on, they're not like apprehensive. And the schedule also helps with that too. Again, you can communicate the schedule through GroupMe. It's great. So definitely communication is chef's kiss, critical. Next, this is kind of a personal preference just as a creative, but I think it's really helpful. I guess if it's a piece that you 100% know what you want, this is going to be very helpful. But if you want more of like an improvisation thing, I guess it could look kind of different. But for a set piece, I would always say visualize as much from day one. So I always start the very first day. If you're in a rehearsal with me and it's a brand new piece, day one, we are starting off the evening, morning, afternoon, whatever. We are starting it off with a PowerPoint presentation. Okay? Let me just pull up my PowerPoint presentation, and then we can kind of talk about like the nitty-gritty. I made my most recent one on Canva. Sometimes I do Google Slides, but it's whatever. So the very first slide of the presentation is always the title of the dance and a mood board for the dance. I'm, like I talked about in Kill Your Darlings episode, I am a very visual learner. So having kind of like a visualization of like the energy, the setting, the mood, the characters, like having that very visible energy helps me kind of immediately turn my brain into like the space it needs to be in to accurately portray the piece. So it always starts off with the mood board and the title of the dance. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, the title of the dance is Ask Her Again Tomorrow, and I know I talked about the title changing, but final title, Ask Her Again Tomorrow. And it's this very like dark academia friend group, big like academia is a really great word for it, like high education, moody, gloomy, very intelligent, like, but we're hiding things, and it's dark and mysterious, and it's kind of like in the shadows running around type beat. So yeah, we always start off with a mood board, and then I like to kind of pitch the song. We'll do a listen through of the song, which we will literally just sit and play the entire song. No commentary from me, no commentary from the dancers. We will just hear the music, sometimes for the very first time if it's not a popular song. Next, I like to visualize the setting. I'm literally just flipping through this PowerPoint. Visualize the setting for my dancers. Now, I come from, if you know, you've listened to the podcast, whatever, I come from a theatrical, like I like to take a really theatrical, cinematic approach to my dances. I want there to be a world. I want them to be fully fledged characters. Like, you could pluck these characters out and put them in a play, and they are fully fledged people, fully fledged characters. So I really like to visualize and detail the setting so it can all kind of fit together. So our setting is at a dinner party, somewhere gloomy and vaguely European, and the group of friends that all the dancers represent are all friends from graduate school. And I really like kind of to visualize this. So like all of my photos, I have like friends with drinks at a really small table playing cards. It's kind of dark. I have like rain and like some pretty glass windows and like all these friends hanging around a fire, and they're in like suits and ties and like vests and stuff, like very prep school, very academia. And just kind of that visualization of like that solid thread of it's dark, it's gloomy, we're friends, you know, kind of just that consistent aesthetic visually to kind of mentally shift into where you should be. It's really great. And then I kind of like to go character by, if it's a character-driven dance, obviously some dances there's not characters, you know, like some dances you just are dancing for the sake of dancing. Sometimes you're telling a story, but it's like kind of just like, oh, we're here and this is the setting. But like this dance really specifically had characters. And I kind of went through each individual character and really laid them out for my dancers, not only visually, but sort of, I didn't really like lay out, I more laid them out visually rather than storyline. They each kind of have like a specific story point. However, I kind of did tell my dancers, I was like, this is what I want. You can humanize them however you want, you know? So for Lily, who's playing Achilles, you know, we have Achilles is an artist. She's painting. She does gallery work. She's like, if you saw her in her day-to-day life, she's like sitting on her floor with a canvas and like the whole thing, you know. And I really kind of leaned in like, hey, we only keep the big turning point of the dance is like you realize they've really only been keeping in contact with each other like over social media, in the group chat. And it's a very thinly veiled version of what's actually going on in their lives. And it's kind of like, we've been seeing all these paintings and they're beautiful and this gallery work and everything. And it's like, oh, it's not as pretty as we find out. You know, Achilles keeps trying to leave. At the end, Achilles tries to jump off the table, a la The Roof, if you've heard the song. And it's kind of a really big deal for Lily's character to kind of both be an artist, but also have this very emotional creative outlet, but that's still not being enough to process it. Next we have Francesca, Alyssa as Francesca, and Francesca is, if you listen to last week's episode, she's like the wife, and so her and Ryan's character Jasper are married, and you know, it was always like they always promised they'd never fall in love, but here they are. And Francesca's like, she is that girl. She's always been the girl of the front group. She's very smart, very talented, one of those people that's like good at everything and you love them, but it also kind of pisses you off because it's like, how are you so good at everything type beat. And she's having this really internal debate with herself because she recently found out that she's infertile. She can't have children. She's struggling with infertility, and she's really trying to figure out how she's gonna tell this to her husband. And he's always wanted to be a dad. Like, he has this whole academic career, but he's like, I will never be fulfilled until I am a father. And she's really trying to figure out, like, hey, we're hosting this dinner party, we're catching up with all our friends, like, I need to get this off my chest, but I also, like, don't want to fuck up dinner, you know? And it's that kind of internal, like, she shines so bright, and she's so talented, and all of a sudden, she's becoming very closed off. She's very internal. She doesn't know what to do. This is, like, one time that we've all really seen her struggle, which we're not used to really seeing. Katie plays Coletta, and Coletta is a professor. Coletta was always, like, when I was creating her in my brain, she was just always the friend, the friend that was, like, so smart, and she's now a professor, got her PhD, the whole nine, and it was always the friend that is so smart. But there's kind of a gag, like, the first, like, real dancing of the piece is she gives this really dramatic toast, and she's like, everyone, like, join in, and, like, it's very boho days in Tick Tick Boom when that whole thing, and then everyone starts, and it's like, oh, Jonathan's doing his thing again, like, oh, Coletta's doing her thing again, like, that's kind of, you know, very, like, heady and philosophical and, like, toasting, and it's kind of the thing where, like, she's very eccentric and expressive, and, you know, it's a lot in television, but, like, you've probably met people like this in real life before. You know when people are, like, very, very intelligent, and you're so amazed and impressed by them, but it's almost hard to hold a conversation with them just because they just operate on a higher level of intelligence, you know? And it's very admirable, but it's like, dude, like, I want to pick your brain so bad. And I think that when creating Coletta, the thing that she is really hiding is her alcoholism as she raises the ranks, as she climbs the ranks, we'll say that, as she climbs the ranks of, you know, a career in academia, as she's, you know, doing more and more with her career, getting tenure, like, all that stuff, research and everything. And I think that she's kind of, like, really sunken into herself, really sunken into, like, the philosophy of it all. She is a philosophy prof. And she turns to alcohol because she can't connect, she can't understand, like, other people can't understand her. And it's almost like, you know, she's fighting a lot for things that a lot of people don't understand, and that can be really hard. And that's kind of something that she's, like, sheltering. You know, she walks in with this huge bottle of alcohol, like, to the dinner party as her opening thing. She's like, hey! You know, and it's difficult because it's like, oh, this isn't just like, oh, she's having fun and hanging out with her friends. Like, this is a problem. Like, this is a problem that we've been noticing. Next we have Jasper. And Jasper, like I talked about earlier, is that husband. And, you know, he has this great career. I kind of left Jasper and Francesca up to Ryan and Alyssa. You know, they have this, like, their conflict is more domestic. It's more internal. I do want them, obviously, both to be, like, working people. They're working, they're using their degrees, they're very highly intelligent, but it is that kind of, like, domestic focus versus the, like, career focus that's going on over here with the other two. Yeah, but, you know, it's kind of, Jasper definitely has that, like, he won't settle, like, it's sort of like, okay, this is, like, so bad. Okay, so Caroline and I just finished watching a show on Netflix, and one of the characters is, like, this rock and roll record producer, and he's crazy, and he rides a motorcycle, and he wears jewelry, and, like, all this stuff. And he never settled down until his wife got pregnant. And that was very much the energy that I think Jasper has. You know, like, he's gonna work, and he's gonna study, and he's gonna grind, but in the back of his head, in this, like, depths of his heart, he wants to be a father. Like, he wants that. And I think he's just kind of like, you know, I have the wife, I have the career, she has the career, like, we're just waiting for this blessing, this baby to settle down, and then, you know, our life will take that step then. And then as Francesca's like, ooh, what are we doing? Like, I love this man more than anything in the world, but is he gonna love me more than anything in the world now that I can't give him, like, the only thing I can't give him is the biggest thing that his heart wants. And I think that's a really big development that we see in the piece. And yeah, so giving kind of, like, visual aid, that was kind of a lot of character talk, but giving a lot of visual aids, a lot of story, and then also letting your dancers kind of work into it, have their own ideas about their characters. Like, that visualization and the aesthetics and the vibes, like, that just immediately sets the tone from day one. Like, when we come in rehearsal, this is the world we're in, and when we leave rehearsal, that world stays here. I want to do a whole episode on method acting, and I might, like, get someone to, like, interview on the pod, but, I want to do a whole thing on method acting, but I'm so not on method acting. Please don't, like, it's just so unhealthy, and there's healthier ways, and it's a whole thing, and I'll do an episode on it later, but I'm very big on, like, when you walk in here, this is the world we're in, and you leave it when you leave, you know, so setting that vibe day one, then, like, the dancers know what world they're stepping into and where to be and where to put themselves in their minds to successfully succeed in that world. Yeah, so that was a lot of visualization comments, but visualization and like a PowerPoint you flip through on day one of rehearsal, like, and even sharing it like with your dancers, if it's like, hey, if you ever want to refer back to like a vibe, or if you want to use this vibe to like, if you have to plan a costume on your own type, whatever. Yeah, I think the visualization is really great. And obviously I'm a visual learner, so I am a little biased, but yeah, no, I love the visualization. Next is dancer contracts. So this is something that we are mandated to do as student choreographers, but I think that they're very beneficial, and I see myself implementing them like even into my like professional commissioned work. And let me actually just read you my dancer contract that I wrote. So basically it's just like expectations and policies and stuff for your piece, you know, what your dancers expect, what you expect of your dancers, what they expect of you. And this is also a great time to leave an open window of communication, you know. And, you know, the contract can be amended, can be changed, you know, with discussion of the dancers. And it's really just a great piece of just kind of setting the laws of the lay of the land, like right before you get into the hard work, when it's like everyone's tired and like lines get murky and we don't know what we're thinking or we're feeling, and we're so exhausted and we're so in the work and we forget to stop. Having this as a like turning back point is great. So I'm going to read you some points. Expectations. Punctuality. The dancer agrees to be punctual for all rehearsals and performances, arriving on time as specified by the choreographer, crew, or faculty. Communication of absences. The dancer commits to communicating any planned absences in a timely manner, providing advance notice to the choreographer. We have like professionalism, just like show respect. Work ethic. The dancer commits to working diligently and putting forth their best effort during rehearsals and performances. Kindness. Don't be a dick in rehearsals. That's really what that boils down to. And this is something I really put a focus on this consent statement. This is an emotionally heavy piece. This is a physical piece. You know, we're touching, we're lifting, we're hugging. It's just everything about this piece is all encompassing. And so consent's a really big thing in this rehearsal process for me. So I wrote this consent statement, and I thought I would like to read it for you guys, just if you want to use this contract as a jumping off point for a contract you might write, whatever. So consent. I understand that my consent for contact, as well as for physical and emotional requirements of the piece, may vary from day to day. I acknowledge that I have the right to communicate any changes in my comfort level or the need for accommodations during rehearsals promptly. I will inform the choreographer of any adjustments required for my well-being and participation in the project. And then I sign it and the dancer signs it. Easy peasy. You know, so just, again, keeping that open line of communication, keeping that ability to, like, communicate, hey, I know I said I was comfortable with this, but today is not really a great day for that, or, hey, I'd like to, we've been doing this one blocking, and I'm not really comfortable with it. Is there anything we could do to change it? And just keeping that open line of communication is really important, because it allows the dancers to feel safe and like they have autonomy in rehearsals. It's so often that you never have autonomy in rehearsals. It's kind of like you just become the choreographer's like clay to mold into their masterpiece. And I always hate that. I hate that feeling. I hate that like portrayal of it. And then it's true, it does feel like that a lot of the time, but I just hate it. Hate it. So I always want to make sure that that's never how my dancers feel in a rehearsal, which goes to my next point, which is let your dancers thrive, foster community. Let your dancers thrive / foster community. And this is kind of like, again, that open line of communication, make everyone feel welcome, it's like safe for everyone to talk. And kind of an indent I have on that is someone might have a good idea. Now, that's not to sound condescending to your dancers or whatever. It's like, I'm at the top of the room, you know. It can be hard when you have an idea that you love so much to kind of want to change it, and that's a big part of Kill Your Darlings. You know, these episodes do kind of go hand in hand, and the biggest thing is just, you know, if you have that open line of communication and your dancers feel safe to talk with you about the ideas or the aesthetics or the choreography or something that might work better, welcome it with open arms. Welcome it. Welcome all feedback. Also, that's kind of my next point. They kind of go together. Welcome feedback, welcome constructive criticism, welcome new ideas that you can work and shape into the piece. Obviously, not every idea is going to join the piece, but if it's like, like, just welcome that. Welcome change, welcome community. Everyone has their own creative story and their own creative path, and an idea might work out really well and you wouldn't have even considered it. You know, obviously, don't take criticism that's not constructive in with open arms. You can definitely block that out, but if it's like constructive criticism, if it's, especially from like a mentor, if you're a student choreographer, but my biggest thing is just like welcome in other ideas. Welcome in other ideas. Let your dancers play. That's a really big thing with this piece for me is a lot of the first bit is acting. A lot of this dance is acting, you know, my theater, whatever. And a lot of it is like, I'm just going to let my dancers play. I fully was like, okay, guys, the first 2 8 counts are just you at the dinner party. Let's see what that looks like. Like, and I literally, they were like, what? And I was like, no, it make it that broad. Like, kind of tap into your character. What would they do? How would they act? Like, let your dancers play and explore and thrive. And like, now that I've done that, we've had some really cool things that's like, that improv was really good. Let's put that into like the routine. Like, this happens every time, you know? And we have like a choreographed cheers. Katie's character has a choreographed cheers with Lily's character. And then that slowly morphed during rehearsal last week to all of us clinking our glasses before like the real dancing starts. And it's like, let your dancers play and explore in the world that you've built. You know, it's not just like, I don't know anything about video games, but like, I'm just gonna make an analogy off the top of my head. If you build a video game world, like a Minecraft world or whatever, I've never played Minecraft, I have no idea. But let other people into that world, let them play in it, let them explore, let them see all the hard work that you did, let them develop it, let them make it human, give it a different flavor, a little more spice, a different voice. You know, it's not a single, choreography is not a single player game. But can we make merch for the podcast and it's a shirt that says choreography is not a single player game? It's not, you know, you've built this world and you've built these characters. Let your dancers inhabit them. Let your dancers live in this world. I literally told Alyssa, I said, Alyssa, the dinner party is happening in your house. Like, the whole thing opens with her setting the table and everything. Her and Ryan setting the table. And it's fully just like, she was like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, it's your house. What would you do if your friends were coming over and you were setting this table and you haven't seen them all year? You know, it's like, let them inhabit the world and the characters. Let them humanize the people you've made for them. It's kind of like you're giving them like a mannequin to bring to life, you know, like a prototype of a character to bring to life. Let them play, let them explore, let them bring themselves into the world that you've created. Welcome feedback, welcome new ideas, welcome constructive criticism. Everything is going to help you grow and help you create a better piece. Lastly is something that our professor, Brittany Benet, she's so fucking lovely. I love Brittany so much. But she opened, where I'm in a class right now that's literally about choreography. And it's great timing because I'm working on this piece, whatever. And she opened the class with, she said, I have 3 rules for this class. Be generous, or I guess kind of 4. Be generous, be honest, be brave, and make art. Now, make art we really talked about in last week's episode. You know, there's no precious work, just make a lot of art. You will learn from everything that you do. And to close out this episode, I really wanted to focus on be generous, be honest, be brave. Be generous with the time that you're putting into your work. Be generous with the world that you're building if you're building a world for your dance. You know, just be generous, put heart into it, put soul into it, put passion into it, and be honest. Be honest when you don't, if your dancer's making a choice that you're like, hey, that's not really the vibe of the dance. Be honest. Be honest when a choice being made doesn't align with what you want, but also be honest in a positive way. Be honest and be able to be like, hey, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Let's try it. Oh, I really like that. That works. Be honest when, you know, you can say you don't have the best idea. Be honest when you're saying like, hey, you know, we said we were going to do this in rehearsal today, but we're actually going to do this. Just be honest when things are changing. Be honest when things are difficult. Your cast will appreciate that line of connection just as much as you will appreciate the line of connection back to you. And lastly, be brave. Take chances. Art is difficult and scary, and I wrote it in an Instagram post yesterday, but it's isolating, but it's freeing, and it's emotional and uncomfortable, but it's life and it's love and it's how we express ourselves. And just be brave. Bravely take chances. Bravely make art. Bravely tell a story. Tell stories that might scare people. Tell stories that might make people be like a little gasp. Just be so unapologetically brave when you're making art. Be brave to make choices. I have a magic trick in my dance. Just be brave with your dancers. Be brave in trusting them, in trusting their talent and ability to portray your story. Just be brave and generous and honest and make art. And I leave you with that in all the notes in this episode, and I hope that this kind of helped you know what to expect when you're expected to be at the front of the room for the very first time. It can be scary, it can be daunting, but it's such a choreography, and setting that choreography is such a huge door opener for a whole new side of your creative brain, a whole new side of your creative career that you may not have even thought would have existed. And obviously be brave in chasing that. That first piece is so scary. I remember doing Cherry Wine and I was so scared. It was my first piece. I was a freshman. I was terrified, but step into it bravely, step into it boldly. Don't apologize for the art that you're making. Make art that sets your soul on fire, and it will then set your cast's soul on fire. Just do the thing. Be brave. And just be generous, be brave, be honest. Make art, and I think the biggest thing is just go out there and do it. Go out there and set choreography, and you can only learn by doing. You can only learn by doing, and I wish you the very, very best for your choreographic endeavors. And with that, I think that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow along on the journey on Instagram at BFA Baby Podcast, and if you want to follow me and what I'm up to, you can follow me at Tata's Ballet. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Merit and a kiss. Mwah.